All right, let's go ahead and get started, folks. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the TAPS Virtual Forum. It's good to have everyone here today. Thanks for taking the time to join us. I'm Dan Henderson, Executive Director of Transportation and Parking Services here at UCSC. Today, I'm joined by TAPS Assistant Directors Tracy Wang and Patrick Randolph, as well as moderator and TAPS Marketing and Communications Manager Megan Edwards. Today, we're going to take you through a presentation to tell you about TAPS and what's going on with us. Afterwards, it looks like we have some questions that we'll answer. Next slide, please. Okay, let's jump right in. First, you can see here some of the primary items for which TAPS is responsible in no particular order. Our campus transit offerings are primarily campus transit circulator shuttles, but also includes disability van services, safe ride services at night, and our connector services to our satellite properties on the west side of Santa Cruz and over the hill in Santa Clara at the Silicon Valley campus. Just like many of you are well aware, TAPSA oversees all parking related activities on campus, including granting privileges, parking enforcement, managing parking signage, reservations, maintenance, and other services. It's important to note that TAPS is an auxiliary unit, which means that we are not centrally funded. This funding model comes from the 1960 Master Plan for Higher Education. That document stipulates state funds are not allowed to be used for parking or transportation. Instead, user fees fund the delivery of service, but they also go towards capital improvements and studies, as well as associated debt service. User fees in TAPS case are primarily parking revenues and the student transit fee, along with some smaller contributions from select transportation demand management programs or TDM programs, such as van pool. We also manage the service agreement with Santa Cruz Metro, the local public transportation agency. UCSC has had this agreement with Metro since 1972, and this agreement provides the ability for affiliates with a bus pass or a student ID in most cases. It allows for fare-free services throughout the county with that bus pass. Finally, we develop and implement TDM programs for the campus in order to reduce trips to and from campus and single occupancy vehicles, and now to reduce vehicle miles traveled or VMT, as that's the metric that's been adopted in the most recent campus long range development plan or LRDP. Also there, I put the small caveat box of items that TAPS is not directly responsible for, but sometimes mistakenly is, although each of these comes with an asterisk as we do have natural crossover into each of those initiatives. First, TAPS does not maintain or repair campus transit vehicles. That is ultimately the responsibility of our friends at UCSC Fleet Services. Roadways, campus roadways, including signals and crosswalks and striping, are ultimately a campus responsibility and the county's responsibility in the case of Coolidge. However, TAPS has a good working relationship with these groups and also can do things with grants and studies that benefit the campus in those areas. A good example is the recent signal warrant analysis that we did with our friends at Campus Planning. Also, of course, we all try to be sustainable, but we manage TDM or transportation demand management as not sustainability as a whole. That ultimately is spearheaded by a separate unit on campus. And of course, we all practice safety. We're all responsible for it on campus. TAPS considers it paramount, in fact. However, campus safety as a whole is spearheaded by UCPD and Risk and Safety Services. Next slide, please. Let's take a look at who we are serving. Here you can see a quick snapshot that directly impacts us. The one that most directly impacts our planning is that peak population number you see, as that is when our resource allocation and our deployment is put to the test. It's at its highest demand at that point. Next slide, please. Over the past 5 years, TAPS has had a number of accomplishments, many of which we've put up here. Some of the accomplishments include in 2019, Measure 73 passed. Some of you might recall transit service levels were forced to be greatly reduced in 18 and 19 due to a continued budgetary deficit. When Measure 73 was passed, though, the next fall, we were able to increase service levels. While there have been some hiccups since then, such as COVID, we've mostly been able to deploy the same or more levels of service hours to the campus community because of this additional funding. In 2020, we secured a number of grants which benefited biking on campus, like the improvements to the bike path, and also benefited our disabled community in that we were able to purchase 3 new DVS vans. In 2021, we launched Slug Bike Life, parking rates were lowered, and we deposited $3.5 million into a new savings fund for new zero emission buses. And in 22, we launched Slugs on the Move, reinstated Safe Ride, we added West Side Connector, and parking enforcement moved from UCPD to TAPS. In 23, we brought BCycle to campus. We added Silicon Valley Connector and purchased 4 buses to start the phased retirement of our aging campus transit shuttle fleet. Also, we launched Free Helmet Fridays. To date, we've given out over 300 helmets to that program. And in 2024, this year, we purchased another 12 additional buses that have just begun to arrive, and we anticipate this amount of buses will enable us to fully retire the oldest buses in our fleet by the end of the academic year, if not sooner. We also secured a Carbon Fund grant to help fund a pilot for real-time transit information, which is the dot on the map, so to speak, that you're all probably familiar with when you get an Uber or a DoorDash and able to follow the driver. So we're looking forward to that. Next slide, please. Next slide. There we go. Okay. Next, I'd like to take you through the TAPS budgets a little bit. Let me set the stage for everyone a little. So TAPS operates with 4 different budgets, not one. So they are transit, parking, enforcement, and sustainability. Sustainability, though, is for the most part a sub-budget within parking since it's so heavily subsidized with parking revenues. And as a reminder, TAPS is an auxiliary unit and instead is dependent on user fees. While we maintain some operational balances, we do so for a number of reasons, including having an operational cushion for unexpected expenses, such as the extensive maintenance work we did on the Core West parking structure recently, and also to stand up new offerings like we did with BCycle subsidies, and we augment existing service like we've done with Silicon Valley Connector, adding that to our transit operations. All parking revenues and all of the student transit fee revenue go towards operations or tactical savings funds, basically. We're currently working on a new upgraded infographic that we're going to be launching on our website that we hope is an informative yet digestible look at where user fees are spent. Keep in mind, the final numbers are still being reviewed and approved, but here's a bit of a sneak peek of the proposed layout for fiscal year 24 and projected budgets for fiscal year 25. Next slide. And here you get a basic idea of where we're going with this, with these images. You can kind of take a look. Again, we're still putting the finishing touches on it and hope to have it launched soon, but you can see there we've kept the format with the pie charts, but we're adding it and augmenting it with numbers and different line items. So next slide. Here are some financial reports that we provide to our advisory group, ACTAP, which stands for the Advisory Committee on Campus Transportation and Parking. There are seats to represent the entire campus on ACTAP, including 3 seats for students on this committee. There's 1 for grads and 2 for undergraduates. If anyone is interested in being on ACTAP next year, reach out to your respective student government group or just let me know. We still have an opening for faculty at large and an undergrad this year too. You can see here a report on our fiscal year 24 and projected fiscal year 25 transit budget. The transit budget is almost completely funded with student transit fees as spelled out in Measure 73 that I just talked about. From this budget, we fund a handful of line items, including campus's service agreement with Metro, campus transit circulator shuttles, disability van service, and associated administration, planning, capital projects. And there, under transit operating balance, you'll see that fiscal year 24, we landed on a year-end figure of about 8.4 million in the black. The lion's share of this, though, represents our working capital balance, which we're going to be depleting substantially over the next 12 to 18 months as we get new buses and new infrastructure to support them. For fiscal year 25, we're projecting our transit operating balance to be in the neighborhood of 665,000, representing that depletion. Obviously, all of our fiscal year 25 budgets are just projections at this point and subject to change over the course of the year. Next slide. And here's parking. Parking revenue funds a handful of line items itself, obviously, including lot upkeep and maintenance, signage, capital projects, administration, and transportation demand management programs. That's TDM again. And those includes van pool subsidies, e-bike share subsidies. Under parking operating balance there, which includes balances for depreciation and working capital, you can see that our final fiscal year 24 was about 5.6 million in the black. A bit of a caveat though, there's a bit of an anomaly as there was an unusually large reconciliation of a negative carry forward in our sustainability budget, which reduced the bottom line unexpectedly. So it's a little bit off from last year. Fiscal year 25 is a little bit more in line with historical trends. You can see that we're projecting our total operating balance also to be in the neighborhood of 6.6 million. It's important to note, though, that we're working on some additional parking lot refurbishments that will likely reduce this number should those costs be booked this year. Next slide, please. All right, here's sustainability. Sustainability includes our TDM programs, and this is van pool and e-bike subsidies. And some of these programs do generate some dollars like van pool, but the programs are mostly subsidized by parking revenues. You can see that large number that I was talking about there, that $1.9 million number. You can see that. That's what I was just referring to. Ideally, this budget ends in a wash at the end of the year. However, there was a carry forward balance of about 273,000 from fiscal year 24. And we'll use that balance towards programs like BCycle and Vanpool and subsidize from parking revenue just a little less than we do normally. We want the fiscal year 25 balance to be $0 in sustainability. Next slide, please. Here's enforcement, parking enforcement. Enforcement is still rather new to TAPS. It just transitioned over from UCPD, and we just transitioned to a new parking management system and enforcement system. So we're monitoring how this budget will ebb and flow. You know, we're confident in its solvency, but it's hard to draw any hard and fast conclusions yet on its long-term outlook. You can see the expenses are projected to be much higher in 25 than 24, and the reason for this is that there are some expenses that are not represented in 24. Primarily, it's the vendor processing fees and the surcharge to the city of Santa Cruz. Those used to be backed out of the gross before the university received their cut, so to speak. But now that we're with a new vendor, we're going to break those expenses out and line item and out. So that's the reason why the expenses are a little bit more in fiscal year 25. Additionally, we need to establish a depreciation schedule for our enforcement vehicles here in 25. And we've added an expense this year on our new parking management system. It is a little bit more expensive than our last vendor, but for good reason. And we've also added some additional staff members. So next slide, please. Okay, let's look at our campus transit service hours over the past few years and our projections for this year. Campus Transit has a fleet of about 30 transit vehicles running on renewable diesel that operate 3 campus routes, the Loop, Upper Campus, and Night Upper Campus, as well as additional services. You can see cumulative hours here. We transport between 1 and 2 million passengers per year. You can see here our service hours starting in fiscal year 19 and the effect COVID had beginning in fiscal year 20. We expect to be beyond fiscal year 19 hours this year, though. Next slide, please. Here you can see some ridership numbers for 2 new services. The West Side Connector had 1,429 riders since we started in fall of 2022. And Silicon Valley Connector had 3,865. since we started that up in winter of 23. The Silicon Valley connector is intended for students who attend or teach classes at Silicon Valley campus. Those folks also may request up to 3 round trip vouchers per quarter on the Highway 17 Express at no additional expense. You can check the TAPS website for more information on this offering. And if Westside Connector service seems a little low, it's because that service is designed to slot in where certain Metro 20 trips don't service CSE class breaks as close as the other trips might. So it's not a circulator service. It's very tactical in its scheduling. Next slide, please. Here's some information on transit improvements, primarily related to safety. While our colleagues at Campus Fleet Services are responsible for the maintenance and repair of university vehicles, including all of our shuttles and buses, we work closely with them and take whatever actions we can to help them do their jobs. You can see here, you can see a maintenance tracker. There's a URL on both theirs and TAP's website. You can go to the website and see the maintenance status of all of our transit vehicles. There are things, though, that TAPS can do on our own to optimize safety in our operations. Recently, we've identified a new role within TAPS. It's a safety and training manager, and that person is responsible for augmenting and facilitating recruiting and training and safety related elements in our operations and processes. We've also recently enhanced our driver safety training curriculum to include in-person California Highway Patrol safety training and a Q&A with our drivers. And this was done at the request of our drivers, and it has been a great success. And we're soon to be launching pilot programs with safety-based technology that is used throughout the commercial driving industry. And we're exploring ways to implement new driver training recognition programs, including rewards for safe driving. Next slide, please. Additionally, 2 summers ago, after consulting with Fleet Services and our transit management team, it was determined that we were faced with a scarcity of replacement parts for our older shuttles. So we began searching for additional newer buses to augment our fleet. First, we identified 4 2007 35-foot Gilligs that met the university's needs, and we purchased them late summer of 23. They arrived and they were put in operation, and I'm sure many of you have probably seen them on the road. Additionally, more recently, we purchased 12 more buses that are currently arriving as we speak. This time they're 2010 40-foot Gilligs, which will also improve our total capacity. It's a mix of diesel and diesel hybrid buses that we hope to have in operation here in the coming weeks. If all goes as we expect, all of our 1993 buses will be phased out by the end of the academic year, if not sooner. Addition to these new arrivals, we're working on some initiatives that we hope will improve the customer service. First is schedule optimization. We're going to be using data from the new onboard technology to optimize and enhance transit service and deployments. And we're hoping the improvements could be less bunching of buses, more accurate headways, and better synergies with metro services on campus. Bus tracking technology. TAPS recently received a carbon fund grant for bus tracking location technology. And we're planning a pilot within this academic year with that. And this will be the dot on the map that I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. In addition to the new arrival buses, we're still on track to begin a phased transition to EV. We've begun our site prep for the charging yard and are working with internal stakeholders as well as PG&E. And we're identifying as many grants as possible for this as well. And of course, we currently have 2 35-foot EV buses on order with Gillig. They're tentatively scheduled for arrival in early 26. And you can see one there that made a recent visit to campus for our drivers training meeting. And it's got a very different paint job than what we'll have. But that's basically the buses we're going to be getting. And additionally, next slide. You can see that design for ours is underway. Next slide. Here's a couple of quick slides for those of you who ride Metro and where campus routes are now compared to pre-COVID. When COVID hit, Metro experienced a pretty significant decrease in drivers, unfortunately. This resulted in the amount of trips. This resulted in a reduction of the amount of trips that Metro could make countywide, including on campus routes. And you can see here that in the fall of 2019, just before COVID, Metro was making about 203 daily trips Monday through Friday and a little less than 1,100 total during the week. Currently, right now in fall of 24, there are about 193 daily trips Monday through Friday and 108 on each Saturday and Sunday. And that totals a little less than 1,200 total trips a week. Next slide, please. And here's a quick look at Metro ridership. It's not quite back to pre-COVID levels, but it is getting there. So, all right. For the next few slides, I'd like to turn this over to Tracy Wang, who is our Assistant Director of Transportation and TDM. Tracy?
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. As Dan introduced, my name is Tracy Wang. I go by she, her pronouns, and I joined TAPS in January of this year as the Assistant Director of Transportation and TDM. And you have heard TDM several times now, probably still wondering what it means. What exactly transportation demand management means is just a fancy way to say, let's get people to travel in ways that reduce congestion and lower emissions from less vehicles on the road. This typically looks like offering a multitude of transportation and mobility options that focus on shared travel. So that's either sharing the trip itself or sharing the vehicles or both. A simple way to think about what I do is that I oversee all of our non-parking programs. This includes our specialty programs, such as our disability van service and Safe Ride, and the more traditional mobility options like shuttles, van pool, carpool, car share walking, and my personal favorite, as you see in this photo, biking. In fact, UCSC was awarded gold ranking for our work to improve campus bikeability by a bike advocacy group called the League of American Bicyclists just last year. And gold is the second to highest ranking, with platinum being the highest. We joined a few other universities in our gold ranking, which include Harvard, UCLA, and Virginia Tech. As you will see on these slides, we support biking in as many ways as we can. Many of you know UCSC is on a hill, so our bike shuttle service actually helps get you and your bike up the hill. It picks up at the CVS on Mission every half hour between 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. And if you don't have a bike, that's no problem. We offer highly subsidized annual memberships to an e-bike share system called BCycle. We also participate in e-bike discount purchase program that's UCOP-wide, and there's many local and online bike shops that offer financing to help you purchase an e-bike as well. We also have bike lockers, free helmets, and there is also a student-run campus bike shop called the Bike Co-op. Since we do have a lot to cover today and only a few minutes to spend on each topic, I wanted to share about BCycle in greater depth, just because it was launched in the last calendar year. So BCycle is one of the major projects that my predecessor spearheaded. It was launched July of last year as a regional program and a joint collaboration between the university and several other municipalities, including the city of Santa Cruz. Hopefully many of you have tried it out already. It's highly subsidized by TAPS. We launched the program with an 87% discount for students this academic year to purchase an annual membership for only $32.75 for free 60-minute rides. It's also subsidized for employees as well, with a different rate. But it's all still a great deal because a regular membership is over $245. It used to be $150, but then they are raising their rates now. So over the life of the program, we've had over 4,600 users, mostly students, a few hundred employees. There are currently 26 stations on the main campus, the majority of those being in the upper part of campus. And 9 of those stations have activity levels as high as over 1,000 average checkouts and returns in a month. The top 4 popular stations are Quarry, East Fieldhouse, Oaks, and College 9 John R. Lewis. This image here with the blue is a heat map. So the darker the blue is the higher the ridership. And you can see there's been a lot of activity on Steinhardt Way, McHenry Road, and Meyer Drive. While the number of bikes do fluctuate throughout the day as folks use them, there should be around 112 bikes available. And I say should because unfortunately a few major things happened last month in September that have impacted BCycle operations. One of them being the general manager moved across the country, and then the bike share operator called Bicycle Transit Systems, BTS, acquired BCycle from Trek, taking on the 10 BCycle bike share systems across the US, which include not only us, but Santa Barbara, Madison, Boulder. And then most of all, there's been unprecedented levels of vandalism in the downtown slash off-campus stations that are impacting the bike availability on our campus. Many stations have been broken and many bikes have been broken and or stolen. So during this transition period, we are relaxing our 6 rides per month requirement in auditing process, but things have been proving there's an upward trajectory, and we hope that things will change drastically in the next few months. So things that have happened probably just in the last couple weeks is they hired a new GM. I just met him last week. He's got a great background in business and community development and cycling. And the company that acquired them, BTS, does have greater resources and experience operating bike share systems in big cities like LA and Las Vegas. BTS is the largest docked bike share provider in the US with this acquisition of BCycle. And BCycle themselves is currently following a roadmap of prevention, recovery, and enforcement. They are flying in additional technicians from other places to help both mechanics and field mechanics. They're looking at retrofitting the docks with stronger locks. For the stations off campus, they're installing bollards between the docks to prevent folks from breaking the bicycles out. They're also thinking about contracting with a third-party security firm to help with the recovery process. We will continue to monitor the situation. We have biweekly meetings with them, and we will build this new relationship with BTS, and we will navigate these challenges together. So we really do appreciate your patience during this time, and we are here if you have any additional questions. One last note on BCycle that I'd like to share is that before September and on the various challenges that I had touched upon, we were actually seeing great ridership on the program with an average of over 26,600 trips per month. That's about 850 average trips per day, which is really great. Okay, so with the introduction of e-bike share, we also introduced a mandatory e-bike safety course as a prerequisite to receiving a BCycle membership code. We've also designed and installed bike safety signage at a few key BCycle stations. You'll find them at Quarry Plaza, East Fieldhouse, and Oaks that have really great messages on how to be aware, predictable, and prepared. We've also partnered with an organization called Ecology Action to execute bike safety programming, such as free helmets, and this is in addition to our free helmet program, free maintenance, free bike education, and all sorts of great bike-related initiatives. These are all components of our Slug Bike Life brand, of free programs and events that we established a couple of years ago, funded through an active transportation planning grant. And over the last 5 years of this program, we have served over 2,800 UCSC affiliates with over 100 bike safety education events, 20-something bike education and bike encouragement events for a total of 136 events. We also hosted 48 bike safety presentations, served over 570 affiliates there. We've given out over 750 helmets, 850 lights, done over 700 bike repairs. So we're really doing everything we can to make sure folks are biking as safe as possible. And we're not the only ones trying. The County Public Health and Ecology Action have created educational materials that are on the BCycle website. You can see on this QR code here. There's also a regional task force that is tracking and addressing local e-bike injuries and includes members from health institutions and police department from both the university, the county, the city, and other local agency stakeholders to all help increase e-bike safety. So in addition to BCycle and Slug Bike Life, I also wanted to talk about a few other offerings in our TDM program. So we do have Vanpool. So Vanpool is where groups of people commute together in a van that is provided and maintained by Fleet. So vanpoolers pay a monthly fee for the program, but they save on the gas, the wear and tear on their own personal vehicles, on all parking fees, while reducing congestion and emissions. And TAPS highly subsidizes the monthly fares by 50%. Over the past 5 years, our Vanpool program has really emphasized accommodating commuting students as well from Monterey, Salinas, Watsonville, San Jose. We average up to 20% of students in the program now, and it continues to grow in popularity every year. I also have a really great stat to share on Vanpool's positive impacts. So from July of last year to January of this year, these Vanpool groups, we have about 14 routes, they collectively saved over 132,000 miles not driven and over $92,000 in single driving costs and prevented a total of 224 tons of CO2 not released into the atmosphere. We also support carpool through the county-wide carpool matching service with Go Santa Cruz County program. And carpoolers can split the cost of a parking permit to save on costs on campus. And finally, there is Zipcar. Zipcar is a car share program, and it's been around for a while, since 2007 on our campus. We have 11 locations and 24 vehicles, with Crown Merrill and East Remote being the busiest and higher demand areas. And how it works is basically you pay a discounted annual membership fee of $25 to access the program. Then you go online and reserve a car by the hour or by the day and just pay as you go. So rates are about $10.50 or $11.50 per hour, $11.50, and includes all vehicle fees, gas, insurance, mileage, parking in the marked spaces on campus. We have had probably over 3,500 active accounts when I checked in January of this year. And the average monthly reservations during a school term is about 1,800. And there's 82,144 miles driven in an average month. So it's a lot more than folks would think. The average trip length is over 40 miles. So folks are really taking them probably to get over the hill into the Bay Area and farther places. As I mentioned at the beginning, we also offer those specialized services such as Safe Ride and the Disability Van service. So Safe Ride, you might remember this service from pre-COVID. It was formerly operated by UCSC Police, and then it was discontinued during COVID. The program was restarted in December of 2022 with TAPS operating it. And this service basically provides a safe, reliable means of transit from one place on campus to another when it's dark, and ensures the safety of students who feel endangered or unsafe. We have around 14 student drivers. It operates 7 days a week during the fall, winter, and spring quarters. And we also offer extended hours during finals and study nights leading to finals week. We move about 25 to 75 students a night. So that's an average of 40 students a night. And the Disability Van service is a reservation-based system with origin to destination transport on campus in vans that are equipped with wheelchair ramps. TAPS has been operating this service since the early 2000s, and there's been 84,738 rides in total since we started tracking the data in 2010. On busy days, we serve up to 90 trips a day with DVS. And some good news is we purchased some vehicles with grant funding almost 2 years ago, and they finally were delivered last week. And a few final resources. Here we have a walking map so you can enjoy the scenic forest paths without getting lost, which I did in my first weeks here. You can earn a $10 gift card for traveling sustainably through the program called Go Santa Cruz County. It's funded by a Santa Cruz County 1/2 cent sales tax. And as of September, so as of last couple months ago of this year, there were over 1,700 UCSC members and over 200 gift cards that have been redeemed. And basically how it works is you create an account on mycruise511.org and you just start logging your commute trips. They have to be non-driving alone commute trips. So whether you're walking, biking, carpooling, taking the bus, those all count. Working remote counts. Every sustainable trip you take, you earn points that you then can redeem for these gift cards, or you can choose to donate to charity. And that concludes my overview of mobility options. And now I'd like to turn it over to Patrick Randolph, the TAPS Assistant Director of Parking Sales and Operations, to tell you a bit more about campus parking.
Thanks, Tracy. Hi there. I am Patrick Randolph. As Tracy said, I am the Assistant Director of Parking Sales and Operations. I do a bit of everything at TAPS. If it involves sales, events, parking enforcement, or maintenance, I'm the person you can email or call. I've been working at TAPS since 2017 and have always loved the work I do. I love working and talking with everyone on campus. The campus parking inventory includes about 6,000 parking spaces in over 80 different lots in 3 different locations in Santa Cruz. We also offer Park Mobile as an option for short-term and daily on-demand parking at most UCSC locations. Currently, we have up to 7,000 transactions per week. Additionally, EV charging is available in 3 locations. Soon, we will expand to 3 more solar charging stations on the residential campus. Let's address the elephant in the room. We are aware that parking has been impacted more than usual, despite the fact that we have sold no more permits this year than in previous years. We have taken steps to address the situation, including making the Barn Theater lot 122, available for Park Mobile or our permit access. I might add that we have noticed in the last 2 weeks that parking access has improved in the East Remote. Next slide, please. Okay, parking at UCSC is in high demand, but the supply is limited due to the intentional layout of the university, which emphasizes students learning in nature. So why not just build more parking? First, building parking is expensive. A 100-space parking lot would likely cost around $3 million or $30,000 per space, and multi-level parking structures can cost $60,000 per space or more to build. Because TAPS cannot receive central funding to build parking, only fees from parking permits can be used to pay for parking development. Therefore, new parking structures would need to be funded by an increase in parking fees. Additionally, more parking increases vehicle congestion on campus, which leads to increased greenhouse gas emissions. This is counter to the university's sustainability goals and the UC's carbon neutrality initiative. Next slide. No one wants to pay for parking. We understand this, but we must pay for parking to ensure that our lots are properly maintained, aging infrastructure can be replaced, and that sustainability programs are funded in order to reduce our carbon footprint. Not all UCs are alike in the footprint or population, but all offer parking permits for their staff and students. In comparison to other UCs, Santa Cruz permits are on average at the lower end of the cost range. We do try to minimize the financial hit to campus when we can. Eligible students who have completed 90 units at the start of the fall quarter may purchase an R or remote permit or a C close-in permit prior to the suspension of sales. TAPS does offer an appeal option for students who have extenuating circumstances that require them to have a car on campus. So far this academic year, TAPS has improved over 280 appeals, which is 22% more at this time than last year. Next slide. Earlier this year, TAPS implemented virtual permits with employees and grad students launching at the end of June and undergrad applications at the end of August. C permits for undergrad sold out in 2 hours and R permits sold out in 2 weeks. Virtual permitting eliminates the need for plastic or paper physical permits, with the additional benefits of no longer needing to wait in line to pick up your permit or worrying about losing or forgetting to display your permit. Next slide. With virtual permitting, there is also a new online portal to purchase and renew permits. This is a sample of the typical interface that a student or employee will see when they log in using their cruise ID and gold password. When accessing the portal, you have the ability to order or return permits, as well as update license plates if needed. Please note that license plates must be verified and approved before the permit is valid on that vehicle. Next slide. Currently, we have 2 career staff and over 70 student workers on our events team. The events team works on many large and small events on campus. For example, we assisted with Banana Slug Day last year with an estimated 4,000 guests. One other service the events team provides is traffic control in 5 areas on campus during peak times. This can involve up to 7 students per large intersection. The events team efforts allow students to safely traverse our busy roadways while prioritizing the safe and swift movement of buses and emergency vehicles. Next slide. Our maintenance team consists of 4 groundskeepers and up to 6 student workers. This team is tasked with the maintenance of all TAPS parking lots and structures, including updating and replacing parking-related signage in all our lots. Their key achievements this year include restriping faded paint for ADA spaces and standard parking stalls, as well as replacing the backboards on all 23 stops. Next slide. In 2022, as part of the first steps of the re-envisioned approach to campus safety, parking enforcement operations transitioned from UCPD to TAPS. Since the transition, TAPS has introduced new forgiveness programs and auto assist services to help with flat tires and dead batteries. As it relates to the budget, revenue from citations thus far has gone towards operational expenses, such as salaries, benefits, supplies, and equipment, along with the depreciation on the vehicles. Due to COVID-related impacts, when parking enforcement came to TAPS, there was no budget balance. We have been monitoring it and making some preliminary forecasts, but it's still new to us. We're exploring new ways in which we can help support student success, such as RSS Fair we had last spring. And now we're going to send this one back to Dan.
All right. Thanks, Tracy, and thanks, Pat. So let's talk about grant funding a little bit. So TAPS has been very successful in landing grant funding, as many of you might know, for years. The department has secured approximately $7 million in grant funding since 1990. Most recently, there have been about $900,000 in grant funded improvements. Some things that you may have noticed around campus that were at least partially grant funded are the solar EV charging, the renovation of the meadow bike path, Slug Bike Life program, and new disability van services. Next slide, please. Now, as it relates to TAPS outreach and communication, in 2021, there was a campus-wide effort to minimize the number of campus-wide emails and adopt more direct approach to messaging instead. As a part of that effort, TAPS launched a targeted newsletter called Slugs on the Move to communicate TAPS related news and programmatic changes to the campus community about all things TAPS. People can opt into it on the TAPS website, and we encourage that everybody does. It's a very effective way to keep up to date on TAPS services, new offerings, special announcements. And you can see here that we have almost 10,000 subscribers, but we'd love to have more. TAPS Outreach. TAPS sets out every year to expand its campus engagement. We do this through in-person contact, newsletters, flyers, social media, different events. Like last year, we engaged with over 3,500 students at cornucopia, move-in, orientations, through Slug Bike Life programs, and at tablings at dining halls, college events at the Quarry, McHenry Library, and we did the new annual RSS fair, as Pat mentioned earlier. And we offer resources to support students' needs as they arise. A good example of this is Free Helmet Fridays and a lot more. All right, what's coming? So finally, in addition to what's already been mentioned, here are a number of other items that are in the hopper that TAPS is working on to benefit our campus. You can see that we have newly arrived 40-foot buses that are coming in each week. We have new DVS vans. We have additional transit support for students with financial needs. We are getting close to app-based real-time bus tracking, the dot on the map. We have improvements for Safe Ride passengers coming, which will bring easier booking processes. We're trying to do more parking lot repaving and refurbishment. I hope many of you have seen what we did in West Remote. We hope to do that in many other lots. We have bike safety education improvements. We're launching a TAPS student ambassadors program. And we've got a ton more stuff that we're really working hard to get out to the campus. And also, if there are any students out there who are interested in becoming a transit driver, we have launched a new student driver training program. Our first participants are already at work. Not only is this an extremely valuable contribution to the campus, it pays well, hours are flexible, and a commercial driver's license is a nice qualification to have in your back pocket. Okay, next slide, please. All right. That's pretty much it for the presentation. You can see there the multiple ways to contact us, and those are all listed on our website as well. There's a QR code if you want to zap it with your phone. Megan, are there any questions that were sent in that we can address?
Oops, I'm muted. Yeah, give me just 1 second. Sorry, I realized that my window with the questions is behind my window with the presentation.
Okay.
Sorry, turn off my share for a second so I can minimize my windows. Okay. And then if anybody, any attendees, if you have any questions that you want to ask, feel free to drop those in the Q&A section, and we'll address those as well. Okay, so from our question form for questions that were submitted in advance, our first question from that is, can I bring my foldable small e-scooter in the back of the trunk in the Silicon Valley Shuttle Connector van when the trunk is absolutely and completely empty?
Okay, good question. So we launched Silicon Valley Connector to serve our population that teaches or attends classes at the Silicon Valley campus and needs to come over to the residential campus here for different reasons, academic reasons. Some of them are grad students who teach here. So one thing that we did do is we put into the policy that personal items, we don't allow those because we want to make sure that it doesn't impact the other riders. Suitcases and different things like that, we want to limit. However, if there is, extenuating circumstances, those types of things where it's a medical necessity or something like that, of course, those are things we're going to take into consideration, and we'll look at each situation, and see if we can make an exception. But generally speaking, no, we don't want anybody to bring any personal items that would need to go into the trunk. Just I don't want it to become unmanageable. I don't want to have to turn some people away and approve some others. But if you have any extenuating circumstances about anything that you need to bring on that service, please let us know, and we'll happily talk through it with you and see what we can do.
Okay, so our second question is, why has the bike shuttle been so reduced when it is so widely used and such a great method of transportation?
Another good question. So with bike shuttle, with all of our service, we strive to strike a balance on our service delivery. We are pleased to see that the bike shuttle's popularity has continued to grow. However, the data from last year indicated that the bike shuttle was at a maximum capacity only 3 times for fall, winter, spring, and summer combined. So we designed service with that type of demand in mind. Additionally, with the finite number of drivers, we try to optimize their deployment in order to serve as many riders as possible. This quarter, while the demand for bike shuttle has increased, we've only seen capacity on it about less than 10% of the time. It is on the later trips, and we are looking at ways to reassess the service that we deploy. So we're monitoring it, and we'll take a look at it for winter quarter and see what we can maybe do differently to try to better meet when the demand is, but at the same time maintain the same service levels for campus transit circulator shuttles on the residential campus. Any other questions, Megan?
That is it from what was submitted in advance. If any of the attendees have questions, like I said, feel free to drop them in the Q&A, or you can go ahead and raise your hand as well.
Okay. As always, TAPS is here. We're very available. You see our contact information there. So if anything pops up and you have a question, you'd like to chat with me, chat with Tracy, chat with Pat about anything that we've covered here or didn't cover, we're happy to sit down with you and review it. And if you have any issues or questions about our services, please reach out. We want to help you. We want to help everybody who comes to our campus, particularly our affiliates. But if there's no other questions, I think we can probably wrap up. I want to thank Megan Edwards for really spearheading putting this together. I'd like to thank Tracy and Pat for your contributions. Thank you very much for coming on and lending your expertise about all the information you put out there. And Anya Chang, our data analyst, was very, very valuable in putting together a lot of our graphics with our data. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your week and fall quarter, and talk with you all soon.